Today is Thursday, May 16th, 2024, and I'm Rachel Hedman. I'm the Executive Director with Story Crossroads, and this is our grand hurrah of our 4-day event of the Summit and Festival. But everything gets recorded, so those who are ticket holders, they get everything. But this particular event, we offer to anybody who like to. So this is not something that was part of that ticket, but is just something that is out there for everyone. And we are excited that we also have American Sign Language interpreters. And we, of course, have our presenter, Jan C. Smith, who is a teacher and a storyteller. So without further ado, let's put hands up in the air. Let's do emojis. And if you put on your videos, we can see your wonderful faces. And that helps with the connections engagement too. So yes, welcome, welcome. And let's have Jan.
Well, greetings, everybody. Welcome to talk about my favorite topic, storytelling. You know, of the many things that I do in my life that reinforces my belief in storytelling, every winter I do a residency with Murray City Arts and Culture. Murray City is a community just outside Salt Lake City. And during the winter time, I spend 7 or 8 weeks in the residency with third graders. And it's magic, and I get to be a celebrity while I'm there, because this isn't like teaching a real third grade all day long. I go in for a half hour to each class, and I'm a celebrity, and I tell them stories, and then they learn to tell stories. So if you live in this area and you'd like to know about getting storytellers in your school, you can send me a little email, and I will respond to you and tell you what's available and what we have done in this situation. So welcome. And the first thing I want to do is inspire you, because storytelling is, if nothing, not inspiring. It's been a life changer for me. And I want to show you a painting that I saw recently, and I'm using a document camera, and this is new to me, but I'm doing my best. I went to Edinburgh, Scotland, and I saw this painting in the National Museum there. It's done by an artist, George Paul Chalmers. And I'm pairing this painting up with a poem of Mr. Shel Silverstein. And this is how it goes. If you are a dreamer, come in. If you are a dreamer, a wisher, a liar, a hoper, a prayer, a magic bean buyer, if you're a pretender, come sit by my fire. For we have some flax golden tales to spin. Come in, come in. So that's my welcome to you today, to come into the fire of storytelling. Now, back in the day, well, I'm going to back up just a little bit. Normally, if I was teaching this class, we'd be in a big, big room. I would have you do a lot of hands-on things. When I introduced something, I would turn it over to you to pair share or do some activity. But today, because of being on the internet, I'm not going to be able to do some of those things, but I will tell you how I would do it in the classroom. So as we go through some of the things, I will give you the adaptation to how to do it in the classroom, what to do, but we won't really be doing it. And some things I will want you to do though. So hang on, because we're going to have a pretty fast 40 minutes. And then at the last 10 minutes, I'm going to invite you to ask questions and get the information that you might need or want or hope that I can offer, and maybe I can offer it to you. So I was thinking about this workshop, and I was remembering back to when I was in 6th grade. When I was in 6th grade, I had Mr. Siemens for my teacher. Mr. Siemens wore little metal-rimmed glasses every day. Mr. Siemens had a bow tie. He had a very shiny, worn suit he wore every day with his white shirt and his very shiny shoes. But Mr. Siemens, I think, didn't really want to teach 6th grade. He wanted to teach band. And so he had a program for us. We saved our money and we gave it to Mr. Siemens, and he purchased for our class something called a symphonette. Now, a symphonette is a little flute-like thing made out of plastic, and you put it to your lips and you hold it like this. And we had little music stands on the symphonette so we could watch the music. And he thought we could learn music this way. We were to do this symphonette every day after lunch. Well, we weren't crazy about playing the symphonettes. And so we always had an alternative strategy with Mr. Siemens. Mr. Siemens was a veteran of World War II, and he could tell a lot of stories about World War II. So if Mr. Siemens was going on about the symphonette and getting us started, one of the boys would raise his hand and say, "Hey, Mr. Siemens, do you remember that time when you told us about supplies being dropped to you when you were serving in the Philippines? And were there bombs?" And Mr. Siemens, well, he would welcome the opportunity to tell us about World War II. And so we drew him in every day, talking to us about World War II instead of honing our skills on the symphonette. Stories can be extremely powerful, especially personal stories. So I would like to demonstrate to you a couple of techniques I use in telling stories to students. And you can adapt this really to any age. I'm going to first of all give you the disclaimer that I am not a great artist, but I am going to draw this story for you. And I am going to have you pretend that you're in grade school and I have come to your class today to tell a story. And I have started off by pre-drawing some of what I'm going to tell you because I probably can't draw fast enough to keep up with your agile minds today. So this is the story. It's called Where the Purple Lilacs Grow. Boys and girls, when I was a little girl, I lived in an unusual house. It was a half-moon shaped house. And where I lived, there were rows and rows of these half-moon shaped houses. They're called Quonset huts. They're made out of tin. And if you live in one of them and the wind blows hard, it will shake your house. And if it rains, it will be very loud in your house. There were rows and rows of these Quonset huts. We had a whole hut because there were 2 children in my family. But if you didn't have any children, you lived in half a hut. And so you just got a small hut. These Quonset huts were on the campus of Colorado State University. The place where I lived was called Vet Village. I thought it was called Vet Village because my father was studying to be a veterinarian, but really it was called Vet Village because veterans of the Korean conflict were able to live cheaply and go to school on the GI Bill. Now, let me tell you a little bit more about living at Vet Village. Across the street from where I lived, there was a really bedraggled playground. The swings were broken. They had a thing called a merry-go-round, but it was all rusted out and really wouldn't work well. The slide, well, the slide had rocks all over it, and it was missing some of the rungs to go up to the top of the slide. So we were very anxious when we could go to a real playground or when we could go to the playground at the public school. Let me give you another little glimpse into my life there. I'm going to do a floor plan for you and show you how my house looked if you would be walking into my house. Well, first of all, you would come into the front door of the house, and in the kitchen, all the countertops were stainless steel. Long before stainless steel was ever popular. We had stainless steel cabinets. We had a big freezer so Mom could buy a lot when she went to the store. We had a little table with chairs for us, my dad, my mom, my sister Kay, and me. Here's our living room. We had a sofa here, a scratchy green frisé sofa, and in the corner we had a television set so that we could watch Howdy Doody on TV. There was a big storage closet here where my sister Kay got in and hurt herself with the ironing board. We had 2 bedrooms. One bedroom was my parents' bedroom, and they pushed their bed against the wall. Now, my dad would sleep right here because if he got up on the wrong side of bed, he would hit his head. So my dad slept there. The corner bedroom was for me and Kay. I had my single bed here. And then Kay, I'm just going to put some little lines here because Kay had a crib. Then across the hall, we had a bathroom. We had a toilet. We had a sink. And then we only had a shower. We didn't have a bathtub. This was bad for Kay because she was just a little tiny girl. So my mom got an old metal canning tub and she put it there where a bathtub would be, and Kay could have her bath there. So that is what I call a floor plan, looking down at what my house looked like in the Quonset hut. Now coming back over here to where I lived. Well, I was excited when I could go to school because I was going to walk to school. And the year I was in first grade, I was going to walk to school. So I left my Quonset hut and I started walking to school. Pretty soon I came to a place where my mother told me I needed to stop. Now this was a busy street with cars going both ways. And across the street, oh my goodness, across the street were beautiful houses with green trees and bushes and porch swings. They were so beautiful. I was so excited. Some of the houses had pink flamingos in front of them. And then as I walked further on my way to school, I would come to a house that had a little hill on the side. And now we were told by the principal of our elementary school, stay right here in on the sidewalk, and then you will walk across to the school with the crossing guards. But you know, kids at our school, we like to log roll down that hill. Or the other thing that we like to do, we like to, in the winter when there was snow, put our parkas down and slide down this hill. But we knew we really weren't supposed to do that at all. So that gives you a glimpse into where I lived. Now I'm going to tell you a little about something that happened while I was at school. It was springtime in Fort Collins, Colorado. And in Fort Collins, Colorado, they have a lot of lilac bushes, just like we do a lot of places during the spring. So we were busy getting ready to do a program for our parents. And every day our teacher would march us into the auditorium and we would sing, "In Fort Collins, Colorado, where the purple lilacs grow." And we were planning to invite our parents to come to school and see our program. Well, on many days, students in my class would bring lilacs to the school, and Mrs. Hopper, our teacher, would put them in a beautiful vase. And after we had the Pledge of Allegiance, then Mrs. Hopper would say, "Oh, boys and girls, Stephen or Diane brought these beautiful flowers. Let's clap for them." And everybody in the class would clap. But I couldn't bring flowers because I didn't have any flowers because I lived at Vet Village and there were no pretty flowers there. So I felt kind of bad. Let me show you what happened next. One day I'm walking to school with my friend Gail, and we come to the place where we are not supposed to touch the people's yard. And this time of year, there are all these beautiful green plants here in front of their house. But besides the green plants, there are lilacs growing all over that area. Well, Gail and I, we laid our heads back into the lilacs. We were smelling them. And all of a sudden, Gail reached her hands back and she pulled down a couple of the lilacs. And I did the very same thing. And then we waited for the crossing guard to come and take us across the street to the school. Now, when we got to the school, well, we offered up our lilacs to Mrs. Hopper, and she put them in a beautiful white vase. And that day after the Pledge of Allegiance, why, Mrs. Hopper said, "Boys and girls, Jan and Gail brought these beautiful lilacs this morning," and everyone clapped for us. And that morning, after we went out to recess, we came back into the class, and there was a big line at the back of the classroom because there was a drinking fountain there. So we were all lined up. We were getting a drink at the drinking fountain. And then I looked down, and in the garbage can next to the drinking fountain, there were the lilacs that we had brought to school. Our teacher, Mrs. Hopper, marched across the classroom and she said, "Jan, And Gail, you will need to go and speak with the principal. And so I started walking to the principal's office. I had never been to the principal's office, and I was crying. And when I got to the principal's office, the secretary told me, "Go in." And I went in, and the principal looked at me and she said, "Jan, did you trespass this morning?" I said, "What is trespass?" She said, "Young lady, did you take flowers from our neighbor's yard?" "Yes, ma'am." "Well, if this happens again, I will be forced to contact your mother. Are we clear?" "Yes, okay." I walked back to the class, and Gail was walking the other way, and she was crying too. That day, when we went in to practice our song, "In Fort Collins, Colorado, where the purple lilacs grow," I wasn't too happy. Ever since then, I don't take things from other people's yards. And that's the end of my true story that happened when I was in the first grade. Thanks for listening. So thank you for listening to that story. Now, since you're here today, I'm going to give you a little glimpse of what my house really looked like. And here we go. This is what the Quonset huts look like. You can see on this one, there is even a little mailbox there. During the time I lived there, my grandparents came once for Thanksgiving. And here we are. And you can see the metal roof there and the windows. And here's our family. And here am I, not very happy to be in a family photo early in the morning. So that is my story. And if I were telling this story in front of a class, then when I'm done with this part of the story, I will probably do what is called a look at the story, a way that Donald Davis, a famous storyteller, would look at it. I'm going to pull this down a little bit. I looked at the Utah State Corps, and this is the kind of form that they would have some kindergartners look at. They would read books by Patricia Polacco, and this is what they would look at: characters, setting, problem. We're trying to teach kids this, but I prefer this method that Donald Davis uses. He takes a story and he says, in every story, there is a problem. Here is my problem in that story. I don't have any lilacs to bring to school. In a story, you're trying to put a picture in the listener's mind of what you're telling. So story is about moving a picture from my mind to your mind. In a story, we have a place. I like the word place much better than setting. And I will ask the students, what places did you go to in this story? Well, they went to school with me. They went to the Quonset hut with me. In the story, we meet people more than characters. The people in this story, you met Gail, you met Mrs. Hopper, and you met me, and you probably knew there were kids in my class. Now, at the end of the story, we want to know if anyone learned anything. In a fairy tale, we're going to learn, happily ever after. But in a personal story, we want to know, is there progress made by anyone in the story? Well, from this story, I learned, don't take things from other people's yards. Don't steal. So that's some of the things that I learned in the story of the purple lilacs. Now, we are going to switch, and because you are students and you've been listening to me for so long, now you need a break. This is my little game I play with students. Every class has an eraser in it. This is called Erase the Face, and this is how you play it. I've told you a story. Now I'm going to ask you to use your face to show me how you feel about some of the things that happened in the story. So I'll take off my glasses so I can give you a really good face. How did I feel when I found out I didn't have any lilacs in my yard to bring to school? Show me your face. Now erase your face. Next one. How did Mrs. Hopper feel when she found out that we had stolen the lilacs. How did I feel? Now erase the face. How did I feel when I had to go to the principal's office? Erase your face. So this is a good way to get kids focused on emotions, how things change in a story. And I will generally, the first time I visit the students in third grade, I'll tell a bigger, like a 14-minute story. And then when I come back the next time, I will ask them to play Erase the Face and show me the characters that we met in that story that day. And that'll be a really good way to review what happened in the story and how people felt in the story. So Erase the Face is sort of a fun thing to do. Now, if I want to work with my students on a personal story, then the next thing I might do, and I've put this on your handout, is I would have them do what I did for you. I'll hold it up like this time. I would have them do a floor plan. Here I go trying to, okay. I would have them do a floor plan of a place I decide they should do a floor plan of. For instance, you might have everybody do their bedroom, grandma's house, a vacation site they've gone to. It's good to give them pretty clear parameters of what you want them to do the floor plan of. And after they do the floor plan, I give them 5 minutes to do the floor plan. And my big suggestion is give them cardstock to do it on, because they really will get into this. I warn them and I tell them, I'm not a great artist. This isn't about doing great art. This is about giving people a peek at a place that you have been. So they do their floor plan, and then I have them pair share. I would have, for instance, even you guys, even adults today, I would have you do the floor plan. If I had you each do a floor plan of your grandma's house and show it to someone else, a lot of stories would come to mind when you did this, and you would have a fun time showing them where everything was at grandma's house. But the kids will do the floor plan. Then after they do the floor plan and pair share with their seatmate or whoever I decide, then some students will get to share in front of the entire class. And from this activity, some stories will come up that children were reminded of because they went to that location. So that way it gives us a story start, even with a simple house plan. It's a really interesting thing to do. When I was teaching at a Title I school, I had the students in one of the classes do this. And when they chose, most of them chose to do their bedroom. But most of the kids in this school are second language speakers, and they often live with families that have 3 or 4 families living in a house. But they proudly would show me their bedroom, which was usually the living room. Their bed was usually the sofa, but their most prized possession was the video games that they had in this room where they slept. I learned a lot about the kids that year from knowing about their living situation a little more. And they really seem to enjoy this activity. So that's the power of a personal story. And teachers, you're telling personal stories all day, and some of them might connect to your life in a way that you might want to share it with your family. You might want to write about it. It will take you a different direction than maybe always sharing it with your students. So that's the power of personal story. Now we're going to take another break, and this break is called our poem break. And I share with you one of my favorite poems. This is from Doug Florian in a book called Laughateria, and this is called The Pizza Poem. And what I bring this to school in a giant format like this, so that everybody in the class is not focused looking down at their desk at this, but they're focused looking up at this big poster I brought. Now, I use this so that children have a vehicle for using their voice. And we start it this way, and wherever you are, just say it with me. I know you're muted, but just say it with me. I love to eat a chewy pizza, standing up or in a seatsa. A neatsa pizza can't be beatsa. Eat it with your hands and feetsa. The next thing I do is show them the actions to the poem. Now I ask everybody to slightly pull their chair back so they can stand up. I'm not going to stand up because I don't want you to see I have pajama bottoms on. But if you want to stand up, you can. So we go, I love to eat a chewy pizza, standing up or in a seatsa. Now put your pizza out to make it. A neatsa pizza can't be beatsa. Throw it up in the air. Now, the exciting part of the poem. Put your hands up, take your feet off the floor, eat it with your hands and feetsa. Now, the next time I go to that school, they want to do the poem again. This is a way for me to teach them about voice and about expression. So these are some ways that we can do the poem. And I put read, but I really mean just say it. We'll read it fast. We'll do it slow. We'll do it in a whisper voice. This is the biggie. This will get you points every time. Let them do it jumping up and down. And then after I do this, I will have them work on different voices. We can do it rudely, apologetic, furious, lazy, whatever things you want to do. And I will share with you my biggest secret. This is what they really love to do. I say it loud, but don't make any sound. So here it goes. You can do it with me. They love, love, love that. Somehow it really, really empowers them when they can do the poem that way. So that's another way we'll do the poem. And when I'm working with the students, I'll just call out poem break. I'll get out my poem and we'll do something with the poem. I have 2 or 3 other poems that I tell them, but you don't have time today to learn 2 or 3 other poems. I do love the poet Doug Florian. He is hilarious and the kids love his poetry. So the next thing I want to share with you is how we would do a folk tale. Generally, when I go in to work with the kids, I always start with a folk tale. The first day I come, I tell a fairy tale. The next week I come, I probably tell a myth. The kids at this point think I'm just coming to entertain them. And then they find out they're going to have to do some work. So the next thing I do is I have a little story that I work with them on. It's called The Talkative Turtle, and you got a copy of The Talkative Turtle. So when I want to talk to them about doing The Talkative Turtle, I I come to the class and I say, I'm going to tell you a very short story. And I've chosen it deliberately because it's short, so that everybody can learn how to tell this story. So you're going to be back in the 3rd grade. I'm going to tell you this story. And you could use any kind of story, really, but I'm using this particular folk tale. So here we go with The Talkative Turtle. One day, a talkative turtle was walking through the forest. As he walked along, he heard 2 hunters, and the 2 hunters said, tomorrow we will be back and we will hunt for turtles. Well, the talkative turtle knew he needed to escape from the forest, so he plodded along and he came to 2 beautiful white birds. And he approached them. He said, oh, beautiful white cranes, can you help me escape? They said to him, well, do you have a plan? He told them, yes. He would get a long stick, and each of the birds would hold on to one side of the stick. And then he would hold on in the middle with his powerful jaws, and they would fly up and up and up, taking him out of the forest and out of danger. Well, the birds said, we could do that, but to do this, you will need to keep your mouth shut. And the turtle said, well, I can do that. I can keep my mouth shut. So they got the stick and they held the stick up. Now, each bird held on to one end. The turtle grabbed on with his powerful jaws and they lifted him up and up and up and up out of the forest. And people on the ground looked up. Oh, they said, what clever birds. They know how to carry a turtle. The talkative turtle opened his mouth and he yelled out, it was my idea. And he fell down, 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 down to the ground. And that, my friends, is the story of the talkative turtle. Then I tell the kids, give yourself a hand for being a good audience. The next thing we're going to do with this story is we're going to read it together. Now I'm going to have you just read a couple of lines with me so you'll get the idea, but I will read the entire story with the students. So here we go. The Talkative Turtle, a tale from India. A talkative turtle overheard two hunters say that they were planning to catch turtles the very next day. When the hunters left, the turtles asked two cranes to help him escape. Beautiful white birds, he said. If you hold a long stick between your beaks, I'll close my mouth tightly in the middle of it, and then you can fly up and carry me to safety. So I'll read this entire story with the students. Then this is the next activity that I've put on your handout. I bring along, this is, I believe, something from the sprinklers at my house, but I bring a long stick. You could even use a yardstick if you want. This is the only prop of this story. I call up from the class two hunters, two cranes, and a turtle. And I put them in the front of the class. I have the two hunters stand together, the two cranes stand together, and the turtle stands with the hunters at the first. I narrate the story as we begin. I say, once there was a talkative turtle. One day he heard two hunters speaking in the forest. They said, tomorrow we will be back and we will hunt for turtles. So I have the kids that are, I have the kids who are hunters give this line, repeat it after I did. Tomorrow we will be back and we will hunt for turtles. Then the turtle walks to the cranes. Now I give the narration for the turtle. Beautiful white cranes, can you help me? And then the cranes say, what is your plan? He explains about the stick. You will hold a stick and then we will go up, up, up. And this is the exciting part. The turtle is going to get to fall at the end. So each of the people who are the cranes will hold on at either end of the stick, and then they'll take their other arm and go up, up, up in the air. Now, I will not let anyone hold on to the stick with their mouth. They will grab it with their hand and they will pretend to go up, up, up. And then everyone in the class are the people on the ground. So everyone in the class, if you're a member of the class, you now look up with me and say, oh, what clever birds. They know how to save a turtle. Then the turtle, of course, says, it was my idea. And now the dramatic piece in this story, the person portraying the turtle gets to fall to the ground in a heap. After I do it once, the students are excited and I keep a little list of everybody who comes up. So now I'll do this 2 or 3 more times the same day. And by that time, I no longer really have to, my narration is much less because the students will just pipe in with what the lines are. They're getting so they know exactly what the lines of this story are. When I arrive next week to talk about this story, I'll usually say to the students, does someone want to tell me the beginning of that story? Will someone tell me the middle of the story? Will someone tell me the end of the story? And then one student will usually raise their hand and say, I will tell the whole story, because they've had this experience with the story. Now, I'll generally do one other thing with this story, and I'm going to switch again to my little document camera and show you what I bring to the students, what I'm going to be giving them. I have what is called a storyboard, and you can actually do a storyboard with just fold a piece of paper into 6 squares, but somehow if I run it off on a machine, it seems to make a whole lot of difference. So I do. So this is the storyboard the students will use. I give them their storyboard, and then again, I have started drawing early on this because I didn't want to take all your time watching me draw. But I will let them copy me, or they can do the drawings of their choice. So we begin the story again. Once in a forest, there was a talkative turtle. One day as he walked along, he heard two hunters saying, tomorrow we will be back. We will hunt for turtles. Well, the turtle knows he needs an escape. Here is where will clarify any words that the students don't know. If they don't know what escape is, and a lot of second language speakers might not have that in their vocabulary, we'll learn it. So here the turtle comes. He asks, two beautiful white cranes, can you help me? I need to escape. Well, they ask, do you have a plan? Why, yes, I do. We will get a long stick and you will hold on to either end. You will fly up in the air and I will hold on. Well, say the cranes, in order for this plan to work, you will have to keep your mouth shut. Oh, I can do that, said the turtle. So they got the stick. The turtle grabbed on in the middle with his powerful jaws. The birds held on at either end, and now they began to fly up, up, and up. People on the ground pointed up. They said, oh, look at those clever birds. Again, a word not everyone knows. Clever birds. They know how to carry a turtle. Well, the talkative turtle opened his mouth and he said it was my idea. And he fell to the ground with a thud. So there he is on the ground. That now, with the students having done their own storyboard like this, I will ask them now to tell their partner this story. I always have a timer. I will give them 1 minute, possibly 2 minutes, depends on what my time frame is that day. And they will tell the story to their partner, pointing to the pictures they have drawn and telling the story from these little pictures they have drawn, a way to put the story in their brain. So they will use the pictures to tell the story of the talkative turtle. They'll each have a turn to do that. And then we'll do something else. I will send them to the wall to tell the story. I'll take half the students will stay at their seat and tell the story just to themselves this time. The other half will go to the wall with their storyboard and they will tell the story to the wall. I will give them each 1 minute to do it. So everybody in the class is making a lot of noise at once, but this is actually a lot of fun. I'm going to show you a picture of one of my former students and her storyboard. I don't know if I can get this. Here it is. And her storyboard. As I've worked with students before, they love to do the storyboards. And you know, in every elementary school, you can go in the supply room and there's usually big rolls of paper that people use for bulletin boards or covering tables. I go get sheets of paper and I cut them a pretty big size piece and let the students do a really big illustration of their story. This would be when they're working on their own story, not talkative turtle with me, but a story that they would later be assigned. This little girl's a really great artist. But then after I do this and they get this, they do their illustrations, the next thing that I'll do with them, and it shows in this picture what she's doing, I will take them into the gym or any multi-purpose room and get masking tape and put their illustrations up on the board, up on the walls. Then the rest of the class will go around, we'll do a little tour of everybody's stories. We'll go around the room and do a little tour of everyone's stories. Each person will tell us their story using their storyboard. And this is a way to empower the students to tell the story without being, I've had to memorize some lines. I have to stand up in public and say these lines. They're having a lot of fun showing off what they've drawn about the story. This to me has been a really powerful concept and I've used it a lot. As I said, I'm not a great artist. Sometimes my husband is a great artist, and on occasion for a civic or a church activity, I've taken him with and we'll get a giant whiteboard. He'll draw the story while I tell a story. And his illustrations are such that you would want to applaud, but not mine. But the idea is to do an illustration so it sinks into your brain. That's the kind of thing that we're trying to do. So with these two illustrations, I want to know right now if any of you have thought of some story in your mind just by raise of hands? Have any of you thought of a story that you would be able to draw a floor plan and come up with a little story? Yeah, several people have an idea of a story that they might be able to do. Are we switching interpreters? Okay. All right, welcome aboard. I'm glad you're here. Well, teachers have a lot of stories that they're able to tell. I'm going to show you a couple of the sources that I've worked with and used before. This is Donald Davis, who's really the granddaddy of American storytelling. He is the person who came up with this idea of the problem, the progress, and the place, all these ideas about how you can figure out what happens in a story. So that is Donald Davis's work, not mine. And I've used it. I've had a lot of other things that teachers have given me through the years, but I really like that one the best. The other thing I thought I would mention, since people are talking about stories and teaching, there is a man named Matthew Dix. You can find out a lot about him on the internet. The interesting thing about him is that he has been a teacher for years, and he was entertaining his students with some stories, and people would say to him, why don't you come to this place? It's called the Moth. There are moth storytelling places all over the United States, but they became famous in New York. And because of his storytelling ability, mainly honed with his own students, and because he's also had a crazy life, he would go and tell stories. And I believe he's the grand champ, 35 times he has won first place at this storytelling competition. But if you're a teacher and you get this book, he has some very interesting ideas, some that you would love, some that you would not love. But he picks moments every day that he thinks he could tell a story from. Just like my little story about the lilacs, he picks out a moment in his day. And so even if you aren't a performer, this is a good way to come up with your personal stories that you might want to be sharing with your family or just for your own personal enjoyment. Another book that I have liked a lot is this one, Storytelling Classroom. This is by 3 storyteller, teacher, librarian people, and they've written a number of books like this. But this book is just full of different little ideas. You don't have to read the whole book. You can just look at an idea, and they have different things that you can pull from that you might use for your own curriculum. For me, as my storytelling journey, I am a performer some of the time, but I do work with students in classrooms, and I do work with adults in learning and telling stories. I always find the kids are much more free about sharing their experiences with you. The other thing I have as a real takeaway from my time in storytelling is that storytelling is an oral tradition, but storytelling is first and foremost, and this is again from Mr. Donald Davis, when we come into this world, our first language is oral. We don't learn the ABCs before we learn to speak. We first are speakers and listeners, and then it's later that we're involved with letters and words. And when I work with students on storytelling, I want to bring them in with listening to a story told. I don't want to come in to students and say, all right, students, I'm going to give you some stories and you are going to have to fill this in. That is going to kill that story. To me, that's going to take all the magic away from the story if I've already said, okay, we're going to fill in all the blanks on this story. Okay, how many scenes, how many characters? I want to ignite people with the magic of story, of hearing a great story. And then I've got them. They want to be on this ride because they are hearing a great story. I put on your little handout. I love this statement. It's on the wings of words that man claims his humanity to man. It is. We don't speak enough today in our world. People, if they had this commonality of stories, our world can be a better and more peaceful place. And so at this point, it's 5:15, but I think I'm going to open it up for some questions. And you might have a bunch of things that have come up, and we'll open it up for questions because, I can talk and tell stories forever, but I'm interested in what any of you might have to say. And then we'll make sure we wind it up at 5:30. So if you have questions, shall I just be looking at the chat, Rachel, or how shall we do this?
So I can help out with this. If you would like to ask a question, I do ask if you turn on your video, because then we can spotlight you, and it always helps to answer the question if we can see you. If you can't, I understand if you can't turn on your video, but you can raise a hand physically, or there's the reactions below.
Do we have any burning questions? Are you seeing anyone, Rachel? I'm not seeing anyone with a question.
Oh, there is.
Oh, Cynthia. Okay, Cynthia, what's your question?
Hi, I was interested in the storyboard, and I
Okay.
shared that there were 6 boxes. Do you encourage that all the boxes are used, or is it as many as they feel that they need to use?
Okay, some people will, like an adult storyteller might fold a sheet of paper into many more squares. You might do as many as it takes you to do, maybe 9, maybe 10. Personally, I like to do the 6, and that's what I stay with the students. I just find that's a good parameter for them to just stay with the 6. But if you're working on a teller or you're with older group, great, do more if that's more helpful. I gave you a really simple story. But if you're doing a much more complicated story, of course you can do that. You need to always make sure that you got the beginning in that first box and the end. So you know where you're going and kind of figure out where the middle ground is for you. But no, it's not a hard and fast rule. It's just something that's worked for me.
Thank you.
Other ideas, other questions about what you might use or what you might want to do with storytelling? No. Okay. Well, if you don't have more ideas, yes. If you don't have any more ideas, then I'm going to spotlight a couple. Oh, here's
I
another.
believe we have another question, so go ahead. Or you'll want to unmute.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you so much for this lovely workshop.
You're welcome.
And yeah, I am in the education field, and often I find that when I'm telling stories, you don't always get the attention of all the students. They are probably very fidgety, or I mean, some of them do pay attention, but a few. So you did tell a few techniques of how you can get them to pay attention, but I just wanted to know whether things like maybe singing to them or something that will make them engage more in the story.
What is your age group you're teaching?
So mainly kindergarten and first grade.
Okay, you're really in the trenches. I'll tell you. Okay, these are my main things, and I do think that the younger students are the hardest students to.
Yes.
Okay, here's a couple of things, a few things I do. When I go in to tell this kids a story, I say, first of all, it's hard for me to remember this whole story. And if you are not quiet, or if you are calling out while I'm telling the story, I'm going to forget it, and I'm going to be so sorry I can't remember the story. So I'll first ask them to help me. Older students, I'll really get into this. I need your positive energy. But with littler kids, you might not have that. They might not buy into that. And then here's another thing I do before I start a story. When I tell them I'm going to tell you this story, And I always put my head down like this before I start the story. I'm really totally quiet. And then when I come up, I am in the story, you know?
Okay.
So I let them know that it's happening now. The story's happening.
Right. Right.
The other thing I've found from storytelling is harder than you think. And the other thing that I have found out through the years is that I need to have a story that I'm telling that I really love, and I need to be really solid on the story. And
Right.
the only way you get solid on it, of course, is practicing. But
Practicing.
you have a captive audience if you're a teacher. And if you messed up on a few words or something, they don't know it. They don't know what you've done.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
some stories are better told seated.
Okay.
And if you've got them around you, seated, if it's a small group, and you
Right.
can look right at them.
Yeah.
Some stories, I have one story that I'm walking across the room because I'm going to where they wash their clothes at the river, and then I'm coming back. I also, I have a story I told at Story Crossroads the other day. I usually tell for first graders, and it's called Sweet and Sour Berries. And I do put a little song. I'm not a great
Oh.
singer, but you heard me with my lilac story. I'll
Yeah.
put, so then I'll ask them to help me. And this, in the Sweet and Sour Berries, we'll do a little song. One for mama, one for me, one for mama, one for me. And
Okay.
you have to pick the right story that you can engage that with.
Mhm.
And the other thing that most storytellers would not do, but I will do sometimes, if if this story you're telling is from a book,
Mhm. Mhm.
you know, storytellers often are telling stories that are not copyright material, but
Okay.
in a school setting, you often are maybe telling something in a copyright material.
Yes.
Kids, I'm gonna pull from one of my books here. Um, most students are used to their teacher or going to the library, and I hold the book here and I tell you the story and my face is kind of in the book. So if you're telling the classroom, this might be the first time someone's actually looked at them and told a story. They don't know how to behave. So you're going to have to kind of teach them, um, you know, this is how we're going to listen to this story. I need your positive attention. But sometimes
Right.
classroom, if you're telling a story, like if I'm telling Lion and Mouse, I might tell the story and then I might come in afterwards and say, here's an author that's done some pictures of this story. What do you think of these? Did this match up with how you imagined the story? And so I might use the book as well. Now, if I'm
Right.
going to go to the storytelling festival for Rachel, no, I'm not going to use a book. I'm not going to use the book there. But in the school, yeah,
Yeah.
I think storytelling a lot of times leads the kids to books.
Yeah.
And I would suggest one story for you that I didn't bring the one book down, but I done one thing with younger kids. There's a book called Mama, and I can't tell
Okay.
the author. It has just 2 or 3 words in it. And it's the story of this hippo and this turtle that become friends.
Mm.
So it's told this way, it's told with photographs, but the other way it's told with just paintings and with minimal words. And
Oh.
so I've had the kids, I've told the story, and then I've said, do you like this with the photographs? Or what do you think of this other way of telling it with no words? And so you can, I think, utilize books a little bit. If you are a musician and have little instruments, go for it. I don't.
Even
Some of
I
my
do.
friends do. They play a washboard or they do other
Okay.
things like that. So maybe that
Right.
gives a few ideas of, you know, you can tell I can talk a long time. So that might have given you a few ideas of what you might do. Are there
Yes.
other burning questions that anyone else has?
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. No questions?
Jan,
Yes.
do you sometimes have to give them story prompts because they're like, I don't know what story I can tell? I mean, do you find that you have to throw out some story prompts to get them started?
Well, generally what I'm doing is when I'm in the schools, I'm teaching them how to teach a folk tale. when I'm in more of a classroom experience, teaching all day or with another group, then I'll first start with with mapping a place, because I think the place will give you a story. Another thing, one of the teachers I worked with gave everyone a Band-Aid and told them to tell about a time they got hurt. That is a great prompt. Everybody had a terrible story about getting hurt and getting stitches.
So
Um,
some universal
Yeah,
experience reminding
some
them.
universal thing if you want. The other thing, if kids are going to perform personal stories, sooner or later they've sort of got to write it down and own it, or every time they tell the story, they're going to change it. So Rachel knows this. So this is the reason I usually start with the folk tales, you know. I think the personal stories are a great way to get into writing and to get into a lot of other things, but sometimes the personal one is harder to contain. And yeah, you can, there are loads of prompts, but I think you need to give them an exact prompt usually, or be talking about some things that they would want to talk about. So anyway, we are at 5:26. Are there any other people who had questions for me? I have a vast amount of knowledge, guys. Okay,
Well,
well,
I think as your final question, I will ask one.
okay, great.
So you started telling stories in the classroom,
Yes.
but you had to, get experience and get better and better. What would yourself of today tell yourself of the beginning when you first started doing storytelling in the classroom?
When I first started doing it. Wow, that's kind of hard. When I very first started doing it, I'd taken a workshop, and then I reached out to some other classroom teachers and asked if I could come in and tell a story. I will tell you, you have to tell a story. I've told a few stories I didn't love. You got to tell a story I think you love. The other thing I think you have to know is it's way harder work than you think. You got to spend a lot of time with that story. You got to walk through it so many times. The other thing I would tell myself is as not to be, just jump in, not to be too nervous. Sometimes I would get too nervous about it and just got to go for it. You're always energized after you go tell a story to a group of kids. You always walk away like, that was great. You don't always walk away that way with adults, but with kids, usually you always like, yep, you get a lot of love. So yes.
Well, wonderful. Thank you so much. Now, just so everyone is aware, in the chat, I did put in how to reach out to Jan, whether by her website or her email. So definitely please do that. And then we also love feedback. So I did put in the link in there, but I will put it in again. It is a general feedback because this is linked with the Summit and Festival. So that's okay. Even if you just went to this one, there is a part in there that you can just click that you went to this one. And of course, if you're a ticket holder with the Summit and Festival, that means you have many more things at your fingertips, and then you can always edit your response later or that kind of thing. But in the meantime, it makes us really happy when you do a feedback form, not only so that we can share the good things with Jan, but also so that we can continue writing grants, because that's really how a lot of our funding comes from, is the impact it has for you. Like, what is happening? What are you going to do next? So please do that. We also want to let you know that there are plenty of things to explore when it comes to Story Crossroads. So yes, we're doing this workshop right now. We're in the middle of our Summit and Festival. So right now in the chat, I'm putting in about reminders about the Summit and Festival in case you're not a ticket holder. But also there is our next virtual workshop, which is an hour and a half. This was a very quick version that is on June 1st, and it's called Right from the Start, Engaging Story Beginnings. So the whole thing is not focused on the full story. It's really focusing on beginnings and many ways to do it, which I think is fascinating. If you would like the chat, I can email this chat. So if you put in your email in here, you can private message me through the Zoom or just share it with everyone. I will make sure that you get the saved chat, because I was trying to take some notes besides the handouts that Jan has. So Also, just so you know, we do have at least 2 events every month. So May is our biggest time of the year, but just know we do things all the time. With that, we are going to thank Jan again. You are amazing. You're an inspiration. You are in the trenches, like you say, right? You have been there, not just as a storyteller, but as a teacher. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And give yourself, all of you, a round of applause. You were wonderful. And until we tell again.
We extend our heartfelt gratitude for funding from the National Endowment for the Arts, National Endowment for the Humanities, Western States Arts Federation, Utah Division of Arts and Museums, Utah Legislature, Utah Humanities, City of Murray, Zoo Arts and Parks of Salt Lake County, ZAP, Salt Lake City Arts Council, and individuals like you. We sincerely appreciate the collaboration with the Salt Lake City Library System, Glendale Community Center, and neighboring schools, as well as the Summit Vista Senior Living. We also have several feed-in festivals. Special thanks to our American Sign Language interpreters, videographers, and volunteers. We celebrate the talents of our story artists, youth and adult tellers. Most of all, we appreciate you. Remember, I have a story, you have a story. We all have stories.